We are kicking off Speed Readings 2.0 on August 8th, and if you'd like to view all 4 sessions, August 8th, 14th, 17th, or 20th, you can now get the all-access live viewing pass on funastrology.com. This time, we're opening the door to all 4 sessions, but live only. I learned so much from Robert last time, and I know you will too. So if you'd like to get links to all 4 sessions, it's only $19.97. That is an incredible bargain. Go to funastrology.com to get yours now. Welcome to the Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast with Thomas Miller and Robert Glasscock. Every night, except 3 nights out of the month, you can look up in the sky and see the moon.
Hi, Thomas. Hi, Robert. Thank you so much for the lovely show you guys record, and you share so much valuable information. My question today is about the phases of the moon, and if you do use that in your readings, how would you read waxing gibbous moon, a Pisces moon, versus a waning gibbous Pisces moon? How would you interpret that, and what's the main difference in someone's character if they have that different phase? Thank you so much.
This is such a great question because every month of our lives, we get to see this cycle, 29 and a half days. It means one thing in the birth chart, and it means another one every month. And all you have to do is observe the moon and what it looks like during these different phases to understand. If you go back to ancient days, imagine yourself as a primitive human being 38,000 years ago, which, by the way, is the earliest carbon-dated animal bone that we have, carved with the phases of the moon on it, 38,000 years old. So we know that astrology has existed since then. Every night, you can see what begins as a silver crescent, a sliver. And every night after that, it grows just like a woman's pregnant belly, until it becomes full. Now, before it gets to be full, it starts as a silver crescent, and then it becomes half dark and half light, and that's the first quarter. And then it becomes a fully pregnant belly at a full moon and delivers. And then it goes into another quarter moon, which is the third quarter. And again, it's half dark and half light, but the situations, the shadow and the light, are reversed from the first quarter moon. And then it keeps waning until it goes down to another silver crescent, but facing a different direction than the first one. And then it disappears every month for 3 nights. Where does it go? So the ancients were intrigued by this cycle. And of course, today, planting and harvesting and all are still based on it. So you can think of the new moon as beginning. Something is beginning every month in your life. And it depends on the house where that new moon is every month, because those matters indicate something is starting in these areas of your life. And in fact, this period around the new moon was revered by ancients as a time to retreat indoors and to contemplate and to meditate and to communicate with God or spirituality. And it's under a new moon that some of our most creative, inspirational thoughts emerge. So it's a wonderful time under a new moon every month to firm up your intentions and to bring about transformative change in your life. Now, if you have a new moon at birth, that's the story of your life, all of your life. One of your major purposes is to bring something new and unique, having to do with the sign that new moon is in your birth chart and the house that it's in, to bring something new and original and personal into the world, to give birth to it, something new and unique that only you can perceive. After the new moon, it's headed for a first quarter moon. It's called between that period is called a waxing crescent moon. And that's a time for usually a lot of nervous energy that is connected with what ideas formed at the new moon. And it's also, this waxing crescent moon is a great time for connecting with your inner motivations and looking at those and being aware of them. And then the moon goes into an opening square, which is like a fourth house square. So this opening square of the moon has to do with foundations, putting a foundation underneath what you started at the new moon, and to connect with the elements of what began at the new moon that give it security. So this first quarter phase of the moon is like an opening square or a fourth house square, in contrast to the third quarter moon, which is like a 10th house square or a culminating square. So here at the first quarter moon, the moon is 50% illuminated. You've got one side in shadow and one side in light. And this is a time for establishing that security through things like strategic planning and being very meticulous about organization and discipline. Because what you're trying to do is give security and a foundation to what began under the new moon. It's just like establishing a family for the new idea, or what started under the new moon, to give it security and to fertilize it. Cancer, which is the natural fourth house sign, is a sign of fertility. So you want to water your garden, whatever that garden is, each month that you're starting, under this first quarter moon. And then, before the moon fully grows into a full moon, it goes through a stage that's called a waxing gibbous moon, which is halfway between the first quarter moon and the full moon. And this is where the new idea that you began, or the new project, or the new relationship, what began under the new moon, really evolves pretty rapidly in this waxing gibbous phase on the way to a full moon. And you will be facing challenges and exploring the contradictions and what needs to be addressed, and then what else needs to be adjusted during this waxing gibbous phase. It's a very curious phase about discovery and adventure and so on. And there certainly can be frustrations. They're meant to be, because you're meant to overcome those as you're on the way to refining and perfecting and improving the major step forward that occurs under the full moon. And it's under the full moon, which is, of course, a direct opposition between the sun and the moon, that the moon reaches total illumination. And it, in essence, unveils what has been hidden in the shadows. So it's a point of clarity. People born under a full moon are very interesting, because their image of mom and dad, male and female, mother and father, are conflicted. It's a polarity. It's opposites attract. It's not the same conflict as is in a square between the sun and the moon at birth. But often full moon babies are born at a point in their parents' lives where there is some separation or distance, either figuratively or literally. And statistically, full moon babies' parents will undergo divorces to a much higher percentage than, say, a child born into a sun-moon trine at birth. So this full moon is a time of realization, and at night, the moon under a full moon is equal to the sun. It's the only time in the month that it is. So people born with a full moon have a lunar archetype that is fully illuminated, and it becomes very strong and may even dominate the sun, depending on the sign that it's in. If you have the moon in Aries, for example, it's a Martian sign, and the sun in Libra, which is a Venusian sign. The Martian sign is stronger, at least superficially, than the solar sign. And in those situations, that under a full moon, baby, in the natal chart, the moon will predominate over the sun, and the person will have to grow up and mature to become more rational, which is the sun, more mature, more adult. If they don't mature, then they are remaining at a relatively emotional infantile state all of their lives sometimes. But essentially, that full moon is the height of awareness, and it's meant to keep those people with a full moon in their birth chart on their toes all their lives, because they are constantly aware of the sun moon polarity in their natures. So they are often cause-oriented people. They may be very selfish, or they may be very generous. They usually are highly idealistic. So if they use their inner intentions to not only benefit themselves, but to benefit the group, the town, the collective where they live, so much the better. But essentially, that full moon is awareness. Here it is. This is what I started working for under the new moon. And now it's clear. And the next phase of the moon is in the waning gibbous moon, which is halfway between the full moon and the third quarter moon. And this is where you can firm up the plans as you keep going forward, the plans that you started under the new moon. This waning gibbous moon is also a great time for forming very strategic and very powerful connections with other people or with groups that can help propel you forward in your goal. And then you reach the third quarter moon, the closing or culminating square, which is a 10th house square. And just like the 10th house, this third quarter is a time of achievement. So this is the point at which you begin to realize where those hopes and dreams and ambitions that you started under the new moon are going to successfully manifest, and how successfully. Or you'll realize what blocks or obstacles are getting in the way of that success. So the full moon, the third quarter moon, is this chance to assess what is and isn't working and make any last-minute adjustments in those things. And then finally, the moon goes into the waning crescent, which is also known as the balsamic moon, and it's beginning to shrink, just like a woman delivering a baby, shrink back into a slender sliver of light. And at this point, with this balsamic moon or the waning crescent, basically that's a time where what you began under the new moon, whatever those hopes and plans and dreams were, will come to fruition or not, in which case it either can be given up or completely revised to start again under the next new moon. So this waning crescent is when you are meant to reflect on growth and evolution and progress. And that's the natural cycle, the lunar cycle, every month of our lives. And it's repeated over and over and over, every 29 and a half days. So it is built into our DNA, this kind of rhythm.
Okay, so Robert, she asked a question about waxing and waning gibbous moon. Now, you and I share a characteristic. We were both born right before you a full moon, me a new moon. We were right before it. You were about 8 hours before a full moon. I was about 20 hours before a new moon. So one of the things that I'm hearing in her question is that she needs to get clear whether she's waxing or waning. So do you use that exact time of a new moon and a full moon as the marker point of whether you're in the phase before it or the phase after it?
Yes, you do. But in a birth chart, for example, we don't know if she has her moon in Pisces and she's talking about a gibbous moon, then her sun is likely to either be in Aquarius or Aries, but we don't know. But it's important to also take into account the house that gibbous moon is in at birth. But in the natural wheel, or in the wheel period, the moon in Pisces lives in inspirations and dreams. and spirituality, and it's meant to. It lives with one foot in the physical world and another foot in the pre-physical, non-physical, spiritual, metaphysical world. So its entire life is lived in the attempt to give physical birth to its inspired ideas and talents and interests. And everybody thinks Pisces is a woozy, dreamy, daydreamy sign, and it can be, but never forget Einstein was a Pisces. So it can be very scientific as well. And of course, Einstein's inner pre-physical life gave birth to astrophysics as we know today. His equation E equals mc squared, energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. That's not something he invented. That is a mathematical astrophysical formula that pre-exists all physical manifestation and underlines the Big Bang itself. Namely, everything suddenly out of nothing previously. And these are really deep philosophical concepts to understand. So the moon in Pisces in its own way and in our own personal level is meant to stay in touch with that interior life, scientifically, artistically, creatively, socially, in terms of conservation, as well as with spiritual and mental and physical health. So, of course, all of the healing professions, as well as all of the artistic professions. Music, for example, is incredibly healing. Ancient tribes, and certainly in ancient Egypt, but even today, ancient tribes, including Native American tribes, use music and rhythm to heal. So those things are all related. So she is born, to whatever degree she is, with this gibbous moon, which is meant to bring those inner realizations and inspirations into physical reality. And she'll do it through every relationship she has, whether it's a friend or a lover or a business partner. She'll do it through her work. She'll do it through her little interchanges every day when she shops or has a meal in a restaurant and how she interacts with those people. She'll do it with her pets, with her children, with her relatives or families. That's her life, is to actualize ever greater inner awareness and inner realization. It's a wonderful way to live.
What a wonderful walk through the entire phases of the moon. Robert Glasscock, thank you very much for that. And I'd like to offer another resource that I was privileged to work on with another amazing astrologer, Stephen Forrest. You may have heard that name somewhere along the way, too. Stephen wrote The Book of the Moon. It's actually all about the moon phases, so that would be a great resource as well if you are really interested in deep diving this. I narrated it to audiobook. You don't need to read charts. Stephen writes in a way that audiobook is perfect for the book, actually, because you can play it in your car and listen to it at other times when you can't read. It's a great resource. Would love to have you check it out. It's available on Audible and on Apple Books. Audible, you do not need a subscription. Just go buy it off of your Amazon account, and you can get it just a one-off. It's easy to do. All right. Hope that helps. Thank you so much for a good question. Robert, thank you for your answer, and we'll see you next time on the Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast with Robert Glasscock.